Welcome back to the Daily Mastermind. George Wright III with your daily dose of inspiration, motivation, and education. And I hope you're having a great week. I hope you're off to a start that will really take you far in your business and in your life. I want to be able to help you today on Mondays with clarity, focus, and discipline. And the reason I break it down like that is because during the week, we can talk about strategies, we can talk about business, but you've got to get your week started right. And I believe that these prosperity principles that I like to talk about on Mondays are ways that I hope will help you to do that. So let's start with this. There's a gap between knowing and doing. Most people live in that gap. They got goals, they got plans, they even have the ability to do things, but they don't follow through consistently. And the reason isn't the lack of knowledge, it's a lack of discipline. And because, if you think about it, at the end of the day, your results don't come from what you intend to do. They come from what you actually do and the stuff you do over and over again. So today, I want to talk to you about how to build discipline in a way that becomes automatic and sustainable. So over the past couple of years, we've been building a foundation. We started with direction, and where you want to go, and then we've moved into execution, learning how to concentrate your efforts. And even when you're clear, and even when you're focused, you still need one more thing. You need consistency. And so without consistency, obviously nothing compounds, and consistency is driven by discipline. So that's why I want to talk to you today about discipline. Here's what most people get wrong. They depend on motivation. They wait till they feel ready or till they feel energized, or they wait till they get inspired. But those feelings are going to come and go. So some days you're not going to have them. Some days, you will have them. And if your actions depend on how you feel, your progress is always going to be unpredictable. And that's why people always start strong, like at the beginning of the year, and then they fade out. They rely on emotions instead of structure. And over time, that's just going to create patterns of inconsistency. And so you will not be creating the life that you want to live if you do that. So let's talk about what discipline really needs to mean for you. And, discipline, in my opinion, it's not intensity. It's not pushing yourself to extremes. It's not short bursts of effort, the hustle, the grind. Discipline is your ability to follow through on what you said you would do regardless of how you feel. It's literally a personal agreement, a personal commitment. And this will affect your confidence as well, by the way. And the more often you honor the agreement, that commitment you have to yourself, the stronger you're going to be, the stronger your discipline will be. And so when I want you to think of it from this point of view. When you develop discipline, your life is going to become more predictable. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop making excuses or operating from, uncertainty, because you'll create more consistent momentum. Let's put it that way. Momentum creates progress, and progress is going to build your confidence. So instead of thinking of it just as discipline, maybe you can think of it as a way to increase your confidence, because you're increasing the trust you have in yourself to execute. And so when you think about discipline, I want you to think of three kind of primary drivers. First, you have your standards. This is the commitments that you're committed to. This is the things that you have for your standards that no matter what, these are your non-negotiables. They define how you show up. And when your standards are really clear, the decisions become easier. That's why these standards are so important for you. The second lever that you're going to have is your structure. And discipline thrives in structure. If your day is random, your actions are going to be random. But when you have a routine, you reduce decision-making. And when you reduce decision-making, you reduce resistance. So many people like to try to get that freedom, but what you realize is that freedom without structure is going to make it more and more difficult for you to actually get what you want out of life. So you've got these standards and you've got this structure, but then you've got your identity. And at some point, your identity is going to stop you. Discipline stops being something that you try when your identity is that this is the person you are. And so when you become who you want to be in your identity, you begin to see yourself as somebody who follows through. You are somebody that matches a behavior that you want to emulate in order to create that life. So getting your head wrapped around your identity is also something that's really important. And if you want to be able to build discipline, at least is what I'm saying. So think of it this way. Step one, you've got to get really clear on your expectations of what you want. And then you've got to define exactly what it is you're going to do, and not vague. You've got to be very specific. And then step two, you can make it easier to execute by removing all the friction and preparing in advance or setting up your environment. It's like when I want to work out in the morning at the gym, I always have stuff laid out because I know in the morning I'm not going to feel like doing it. And so when you know what you want and you set yourself up for success, then you just need to start small and build. So many people are trying so hard to overwhelm themselves that they never get discipline, because discipline grows through repetition, not through intention. Your intention's important, but discipline's going to grow through repetition. And I think it's also important, the last thing I would recommend is that you track your consistency. You want to track consistency, not a result. And so results are important, but your consistency is what's going to improve over time and make it work so much more for you to create discipline. And when you do this, you're going to follow through. So really, I would encourage you to sort of break it down for yourself and start to realize that discipline is going to be a key point for you, but you have to learn ways to create that discipline in your life. So let me just point out a few problems that a lot of us have. And I fall into this as well. Trying to rely on willpower alone, that's a big problem. Willpower is going to fade. Systems and structure are going to sustain. And, another problem people have is they set unrealistic expectations. Think about it. If you're trying too hard to do too many things all at once, you're not going to maintain it. So stop doing that. What happens usually is that leads to a setback, and then, you stop and you quit. So do what you can to be consistent and set realistic expectations. And also remember that if you're not really clear on what you want to do, it's really hard to be disciplined. If you don't define it, you're not going to follow through. So I want you to, the reason I'm telling you all these things around discipline is I really want you to shift your mindset. And in order to shift your mindset around discipline, you have to realize that discipline is not a restriction. It's something that's going to line you right up with what you're trying to create in your life. And, you're trying to align your goals with your behaviors, and you want the actions you take in your life to almost be inevitable, because discipline is going to give you that structure to help you to do it. So what I'd like you to do is sort of this week, focus on something simple that you can implement immediately and start creating discipline, because whether you think you're disciplined or not, there's always another level that you can go into. And just figure out what that is, what you're going to focus on, and be consistent and track it, and don't worry about being perfect. But the more you can take little things in your life and build structure and discipline and consistency into it, I promise you the more freedom you're actually going to have in your life. Discipline is one of those key factors that will create more freedom for you, not less freedom. So before we take off, let me just bring this all together. Your direction gives you a target. And execution is what keeps you moving, but discipline will keep you going. And if you build discipline, you can create results on demand, and you will consistently perform because you're no longer guessing, you're just executing. And when you do this in a structured way, you won't be wondering what you're doing every day. You won't be wondering what you're going to do next week. You will just simply be executing on this stuff in your life. And so I hope that's something that gives you some pause for thought, gives you some inspiration to dial it up in certain areas of your life. Because as I've talked about over the last few Mondays, clarity is super important. Focus is going to help you know you're going in the right direction, but discipline is where you're really going to go to the next level. So I hope these are things that help you. Do me a favor and share this show. If you're learning anything, if you're getting some value out of the mastermind, help us to share the message. We don't run ads on the show right now, and so it would really help us a lot. And the other thing is, I'd like to ask you to let us know what you're doing. Hit us up on the Daily Mastermind. Email me directly if you'd like. I always put my email out there as well, so you can email me, and I answer all my emails. And I look forward to hearing about your wins or what you're struggling with, and we can work together to help you get it to the next level. Because it's never too late to start living the life you're meant to live, but you've got to take some actions, and you've got to constantly and consistently improve. I hope that's something that'll help you. Have an amazing day, and I'll talk with you soon.